Winston Churchill, the man who defied the odds and changed history. Churchill, a name synonymous with resilience, courage, and leadership. He was a man who stared adversity in the face and refused to blink. Churchill led Britain during one of its darkest hours, standing tall against the Nazi threat in World War II. His rousing speeches, unshakable determination, and keen sense of strategy turned the tide of history. But beyond the wartime heroics, Churchill was a complex and fascinating individual. From a turbulent childhood to a career marked by both triumph and controversy, his life was anything but ordinary. So, who was Winston Churchill? Let's dive into the life of this iconic leader. The early life of Winston Churchill. Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill was born on November 30th, 1874, at Blenheim Palace in Oxfordshire, England. He was the son of Lord Randolph Churchill, a prominent conservative politician, and Jenny Jerome, an American socialite. Churchill's privileged upbringing came with expectations, but his childhood wasn't easy. He often felt neglected by his parents, especially his father, who was distant and critical. Young Winston was sent to boarding school, where he struggled academically and was considered rebellious. Interestingly, Churchill developed a strong interest in history and literature, which later shaped his career as a writer and orator. A lesser-known fact, Churchill had a lisp as a child, but he worked tirelessly to overcome it and became one of history's greatest speakers. In 1893, he joined the Royal Military Academy at Sandhurst, graduating near the top of his class. This marked the beginning of his military and political journey. Winston Churchill's journey to leadership. Churchill's early career was marked by adventure. As a young officer in the British Army, he saw action in places like India, Sudan, and South Africa. During the Boer War, he was captured as a prisoner of war but made a daring escape, earning him national fame. Churchill used this fame to launch his political career. In 1900, he was elected as a member of parliament for the Conservative Party. However, his early political career was anything but smooth. He switched parties, joining the Liberals in 1904, and became known for his progressive ideas, including support for labor rights and social welfare. By the time World War I broke out, Churchill held key positions, including First Lord of the Admiralty. His tenure wasn't without controversy. The disastrous Gallipoli campaign in 1915 led to his resignation. But Churchill's resilience shone through. He returned to politics and rejoined the Conservative Party in the 1920s, eventually becoming Chancellor of the Exchequer. Winston Churchill's leadership in World War II. When World War II erupted in 1939, Britain was desperate for strong leadership. By 1940, Churchill became Prime Minister, a role he held during the most critical years of the war. His speeches, filled with defiant optimism, inspired a nation under siege. Who could forget his famous lines? "We shall fight on the beaches. We shall never surrender." Churchill's strategy and alliances were pivotal in defeating Nazi Germany. He forged strong ties with U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt and Soviet leader Joseph Stalin, creating the Allied coalition. Churchill's tireless efforts kept Britain standing, even during the darkest days of the Blitz. His leadership wasn't just about military strategy. It was about giving people hope when all seemed lost. Post-war Churchill, a legacy of resilience after the war, Churchill faced challenges in peacetime politics. He lost the 1945 election, but returned as Prime Minister in 1951. Even in his later years, Churchill remained an influential figure, warning of the dangers of the Cold War and advocating for European unity. He also continued his passion for writing, winning the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1953 for his historical works. Churchill passed away on January 24, 1965, leaving behind a legacy that continues to inspire. The legacy of Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill was more than a wartime leader. He was a statesman, a writer, a painter, and a symbol of resilience. His leadership saved Britain from the brink of collapse, and his words continue to echo through history. Churchill showed the world that determination and courage can overcome even the gravest challenges. Top 10 questions about Winston Churchill. What is Winston Churchill most famous for? He is most famous for leading Britain during World War II and his inspiring speeches that rallied the nation. What was Churchill's greatest achievement? His greatest achievement was his leadership in World War II, which helped defeat Nazi Germany and preserve democracy. Did Winston Churchill win the Nobel Prize? Yes. He won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1953 for his historical writings. What was Churchill's role in the Cold War? Churchill was one of the first leaders to warn about the dangers of Soviet expansion, coining the term Iron Curtain in a famous speech. What were Churchill's most famous speeches? His most famous speeches include "We shall fight on the beaches, their finest hour," and "Blood, toil, tears, and sweat." Did Churchill serve in the military? Yes. Churchill served as an officer in the British Army and saw action in various conflicts, including the Boer War. What books did Winston Churchill write? Churchill wrote numerous books, including the Second World War and a history of the English-speaking peoples. How did Churchill inspire people during the war? Through his speeches, unyielding determination, and ability to rally the British people, even in the face of overwhelming odds. Was Churchill always successful in politics? No. Churchill faced several setbacks, including the Gallipoli disaster and losing elections, but he always bounced back. Why is Winston Churchill considered a great leader? He is considered a great leader for his ability to lead with courage, adapt to challenges, and inspire others through his words and actions.